The Accumulator is a very simple utility patch that logs and indexes changing voltages over a performance. Essentially, it's really just a sample and hold that samples its own output. Provided that no extra voltage is being added or subtracted, the sample and hold output will remain at the same voltage. In this example, I'm using the Accumulator patch to control the frequency of a low-pass filter. I'm using a simple disting sample and hold. I've got the output of the sample and hold plugged into a Doepfer mixer. The output of the Doepfer mixer goes back into the sample and hold. Added to the mixer is the CV voltage that we want to accumulate. Positive voltages will cause the Accumulator patch to rise stepwise based on the sample and hold, and negative voltages will cause it to drop. In this example, I'm using a joystick to add or subtract voltages from the Accumulator patch. You can see on the O-Tool scope that the top values are the current values of the accumulator, and the bottom values are the voltages that I'm adding or subtracting by about 1 volt each way. The Doepfer VU meter is also being used to track the output of the accumulator. This is a convenient patch to use when you've created a big complex generative structure and you want some way to be able to keep track of the amount of voltage energy that's being moved around your patch. It's really simple to take a bunch of CVs, sum them together, shoot them into the accumulator, and then use the resulting output to have your patch do other things in a kind of a tail-chasing way. It's simple to set up and lots of fun to play with. This next patch is the Quantize Wrapper. I'm using the right-hand side of maths to send a slow triangle envelope to a Doepfer quantizer that's playing a major scale up and down by about 4 or 5 octaves. Now, if this was a performance and I wanted to add another part, such as a bass line, and I wanted to limit the note range in which that bass line played, I would use one of these Quantize wrappers. So what I've done is I've multed the output of the Doepfer quantizer that's performing about 4 or 5 octaves, and then I've got it patched into an IntelliGel U scale, but I've got that quantizer set to quantize to the octaves. Then I'm taking the output of the IntelliGel quantizer and I'm inverting it and then mixing it in at 1 volt per octave with the original Doepfer quantizer. For the purposes of this demonstration, I've panned the 2 oscillators to the left and right sides so that you can hear what they're doing on their own. You can see by looking at the scopes what's going on. The right-hand Doepfer analog meter is tracking the octave jumps. The O'Toole scope shows the outputs of each quantizer. The red trace is the original 4-octave major scale, and the green trace is the inverted 1-octave jumps coming from the IntelliGel U scale. It's easy to tune the patch to alter the range of the wrapping distance to be 1, 2, 3 octaves, or really any amount of notes. finally, we have the Mini Fritz. I'm a big fan of Mini Fritz and his chaos modules, and while reading through his documentation, I got the idea to set up a simple kind of mini chaos patch. So all I've done here is taken a Doepfer sine wave, tuned to the low audio frequency, and I've got it patched into a Lattic low-pass filter that's also tuned fairly low. I've got the resonance up really high, so it's just on the edge of cutting in. As I sweep the frequency of the low-pass filter, the output LFO will tend to change in frequency and volume. Then I'm using that output LFO to drive a quantizer, which in turn is patched into an Elements playing a plucky guitar sound. The O2 scope is showing us the output from the Lattic filter in quadrature. It's easy to see from the little circle in the scope that as I change the low-pass filter frequency, the shape and movement of that circular LFO is constantly changing. Because I'm quantizing the low-frequency oscillations coming out of that filter, I'm getting continually changing melodies out of my quantizer. I'm using a CV keyboard to control the frequency of the low-pass filter. This lets me go back to any key that I like and get the same output from the quantizer. The result of this patch gives me a semi-random sequencer that can always be changed up, but I can always return back to the previous sequences. Thank you for watching Stupid Modular Tricks. Please like and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon so that I can afford more all-important cat food.